Chapter 18, The God Who Hesitated. After the break, the silence after the breaking was louder than any battle. It did not rush in, it did not crash, it simply settled like dust over something that should still be burning. I stood in the first light chamber with my sword lowered, breath ragged, every muscle trembling, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, something I did not yet have a word for. The lattice was gone, the chains were gone, the sphere that had held darkness, no, not darkness, presence. That presence was no longer contained. The chamber felt hollow, wrong, in a different way now. Before, it had been suffocating, tight with pressure, with something restrained. Now, it felt like a wound that had been open too wide. Maren was the first to move. "Caelan," she said, voice low but steady, "tell me that wasn't a mistake." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because I didn't know if I had just freed a god, or released the very thing the tribunal had spent centuries hiding. Behind us, Lisa stepped closer to the center of the chamber, her fire dim but steady in her palm. The glow cast shifting shadows across the pillars, the 7 sigils now cracked and misaligned. "It's gone," she whispered. "No," Caelan said quietly. We all turned. He stood near where the lattice had been, crouched, hand hovering just above the air, as if feeling for heat. "Not gone," he corrected. "Changed." A faint pulse moved through the space, barely there, but I felt it. A tremor, not beneath my feet, but inside my chest, like something knocking once, waiting, then still. Keth shifted uneasily, gripping his axe tighter. "I don't like that," he muttered. "Neither do I," Bram said, stepping forward. His gaze moved slowly around the chamber, thoughtful, heavy. "But I don't think we've made things worse." "That's a bold claim," Caelan replied. Bram met his eyes calmly. "No," he said. "It's a necessary one. I finally found my voice. He's free," I said. The words felt too simple, too small for what had just happened. Maren looked at me sharply. "You're sure?" "No," I admitted, "but I know this." I took a step forward into the space where the sphere had once hovered. The air was warm now, not burning, not cold, just present. "He's no longer contained," I finished. The chamber answered with silence, but beneath it, that faint pulse again, stronger this time, and for the first time since everything began, it did not feel wrong. The voice that remains. We didn't leave immediately. None of us wanted to. Not because we were safe, but because we weren't sure the world outside this chamber would still make sense. The first light chamber had always been a place of answers, even when those answers were hidden. Now it felt like the only place where the truth had been partially restored. I knelt, not in prayer, not in obedience, but because I needed to understand. My hand hovered over the air where the lattice had been. The moment my fingers crossed the threshold, the world shifted, not into light, not into vision, into memory, but not mine. I saw, no, I felt chains, not physical, conceptual, constructed, layered, law over truth, order over conscience, and beneath it all, a voice, faint, not commanding, not demanding, waiting. "Caelan." I inhaled sharply, my eyes snapped open. The chamber returned instantly. Maren was at my side in a heartbeat. "What happened?" I stared forward, pulse racing. "He spoke," I said. Caelan frowned. "You're sure?" "No," I said again. "But I don't think it was like before." "How?" Lisa asked. I struggled to explain. The other voice, the corrupted one, it forced itself into the command. It twisted the words. It demanded obedience. I looked down at my hand. This didn't. Marin crouched beside me. What did it say? I hesitated, because it wasn't the words that mattered. It was the feeling behind them. Nothing I had to obey, I said slowly. Only something I had to hear. Silence stretched between us. Then Bram spoke, quietly. That sounds closer to truth than command. I looked up at him. He held my gaze. True faith doesn't force action, he continued. It reveals it. The words settled deep. Too deep, because if that was true, then everything I had been trained to follow, everything the tribunal taught, everything about obedience was built on something else, something that wasn't truth. A faint tremor passed through the chamber, stronger this time. We all felt it. Lysa's fire flickered wildly. Keth swore under his breath. Caelan turned toward the far wall. No, he said, not fear, recognition. Yeah, the interference, he added. It's reacting. I stood. My hand went to my sword instinctively, but this wasn't an enemy I could strike. The tremor deepened, the pillars groaned, cracks spread through the sigils, light bleeding through them like something trying to break free from within the stone itself. And then the voice returned, not just to me, to all of us. Not words, not sound, a pressure, a question. What is truth? When power defines it. Marin staggered slightly. Did you hear? Yes, I said. Everyone had, even Keth. He looked unsettled, but not afraid. That's not a command, he muttered. No, Caelan agreed. It's not. And that terrified me more than anything, because for the first time, we weren't being told what to do. The god who hesitated. The chamber didn't collapse. It didn't erupt. It opened, not physically, but in the way a lie opens when you stop believing it. The sigils on the pillars shifted, not breaking, realigning, as if the structure itself was remembering something it had been forced to forget. I stepped forward again. This time, I didn't hesitate. Nullstar, I said. The name felt forbidden, but also right. I don't know if you can hear me, I continued. But if you can, I stopped. Because I didn't know what to ask. Not guidance, not orders, not even truth. Because truth, I was beginning to understand, wasn't something given. It was something chosen. Behind me, Marin spoke. If you're real, she said, voice steady despite everything, then answer one thing. She stepped beside me. What happened to Solyn? The chamber stilled, the pulse slowed, then a shift, and suddenly we were not alone. It wasn't a form, not fully, but something shaped, light, fractured, layered with shadow. Standing, not before us, but within the space itself. Nullstar, not as a god descending, but as something emerging, incomplete, wounded, watching, and behind him some sound fainter, struggling, a second presence. My breath caught. Solyn, I whispered. The figure did not fully turn, but I felt it. Recognition, pain, and something far worse. Hesitation. Marin's voice trembled. For the first time, whoa. Why can I feel them both? Nullstar's presence shifted, and this time he answered, not in command, not in decree, but in truth, because they are no longer separate. The words didn't echo. They settled like something that had always been there. We stared, trying to understand, trying to process something that should not have been possible. You mean, Lysa whispered, they're merged? No, The answer came gently, entangled. The distinction mattered, and I didn't fully understand why. "What does that mean?" I asked. The response came slower this time, as if choosing the words carefully. Solyn struck. "Not to destroy, to contain. But the truth does not yield to containment." The chamber dimmed slightly, and for a moment I saw it. The strike, the hesitation, the regret, and the fracture that followed. "They couldn't do it," I breathed. Merrin turned sharply. "What?" "They couldn't destroy him," I said, staring at the shifting presence before us. "Not fully. Because part of them knew it was wrong." The realization hit like a physical blow. The god of judgment, the embodiment of divine law, had doubted. And in that moment, something had broken. Not just Null Star's chains, Solyn's certainty, and that fracture had never healed. The consequence of truth. The chamber began to tremble again, not violently, but steadily, like something waking up. "Is this because we freed you?" Caelan asked. The answer came immediately. "No, this is because the lie is weakening." I felt that in my bones, not as fear, as inevitability. "The tribunal," Bram said quietly. "They built everything on that lie. Yes, the word wasn't spoken, but we all heard it." "And now?" Merrin asked. The presence flickered, stronger than. "Now they will tighten their hold." My stomach dropped. "Malric," I said. The name felt like a shadow. "He won't let this spread," Merrin added. "He'll force it back into silence. Worse." The response came sharper this time. "He will claim it as proof of corruption, of heresy, of rebellion, of you." Keth barked a humorless laugh. "Of course he will. That's how power survives," Thalin muttered. "By redefining truth as threat." Lisa stepped closer to me. "What do we do?" she asked. The question landed heavier than any command ever had. Because now there was no answer given, only a choice. I looked at the presence before us, at the fractured light, at the hesitation that had reshaped everything. "You said one heart would hear the truth," I said. The pulse deepened. Recognition. "That's me, isn't it?" I continued. Silence. Then, "You are not the only one." Relief flickered through me, but it didn't remove the weight. It multiplied it. Because that meant others would face this, others would have to choose, and many would fail. "What happens if we do nothing?" I asked. The answer came slowly, carefully, as if even now it would not force truth upon us. "Then the lie becomes law, and the light becomes obedience without conscience." I closed my eyes and saw it, a world where no one questioned, where no one resisted, where divine command meant absolute compliance. Even when it was wrong. That wasn't faith. That was control. I opened my eyes, and finally, I understood. "I won't let that happen," I said, not as a vow, as a decision. Merrin stepped beside me. "You're not alone," she said. Caelan sighed. "Well, that's unfortunate." Keth grinned faintly. "Good. I was hoping for a proper fight." Lisa's fire flared brighter. "Then we start now." Bram simply nodded, steady, certain. The chamber responded, the pulse strengthened, and for the first time, it felt like agreement. The first step against gods. We left the first light chamber, not as servants of the tribunal, not as instruments of divine will, but as something far more dangerous. Witnesses. The corridors beyond were already shifting. Light flickered inconsistently along the walls. Sigils warped. Whispers echoed where none should exist. The fracture was spreading, not violently, but undeniably. They're going to feel this, Merrin said. They already do, Caelan replied. I could feel it too, not just in the air, in the connection itself. The divine stream was no longer stable, and somewhere far above, something stirred. Not Nullstar, not Solyn, something else, watching, waiting, reacting. I stopped. The others turned. What is it? Lisa asked. I didn't answer immediately because the realization came slowly, horribly. There's more, I said. Merrin frowned. More what? I looked back toward the chamber we had just left, toward the place where truth had been buried. Nullstar wasn't the only thing bound, I said. Silence fell, heavy, dangerous, and for the first time since everything began, I felt something new. Not doubt, not fear, not even resolve. Warning. Whatever had been manipulating the divine stream, whatever had twisted Solyn's voice, whatever had turned command into corruption, we hadn't stopped it. We had only exposed it. And now it knew we were coming. The signal that breaks silence. We did not get far before the world answered. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. The moment we crossed the outer threshold of the first light chamber, the corridor snapped into something else entirely. The air thickened. Every sigil etched into the stone walls flickered, then realigned. Not randomly, not chaotically, purposefully. Caelan stopped first. Wait, he said sharply. We froze. A low hum filled the corridor. Not from ahead, not from behind. From everywhere. I felt it crawl across my skin, seep into my bones, press against my thoughts, and then it spoke. Not like Nullstar, not like Solyn, not even like the corrupted voice I had heard before. This was constructed, cold, precise, layered. Containment breach confirmed, Lisa flinched. That's not divine. No. Caelan said quietly. It's worse. The sigils along the walls flared bright, too bright, blinding, then dimmed, reforming into something new. Symbols I didn't recognize, but I understood their purpose instantly. Control, restriction, correction. Merrin's hand went to her blade. That's tribunal magic. Bram shook his head slowly. No, not entirely. Keth growled. Then what is it? The answer came from the corridor itself. Deviation detected. Source identified. A pause. Then Caelan Dawnspear. My name echoed. Not spoken, but targeted. Every muscle in my body locked. That's not a voice, Caelan said. That's a system. And then it adapted. Malric's reach, far above us, though I could not see it. I felt something shift, a pulling, a tightening, the divine stream itself, constricted, like a throat closing, and then pain, sharp, immediate, explosive. I dropped to one knee with a gasp, clutching my chest. Caelan! Merrin shouted. But I barely heard her. Because, for a moment, I wasn't in the corridor. I was somewhere else, dark, vast, structured, and at the center of it, Malric, not physically, but present, connected. His voice cut through everything. Ah, he said softly, calm, controlled, terrifying. So it's you. I tried to move. I couldn't. Do you have any idea, he continued, what you've done? The space around him pulsed, threads of light and shadow feeding into him from all directions. Not natural, not divine, extracted, forced. You've accelerated something you were never meant to witness, he said. You've stepped into a fracture you cannot possibly understand. I forced myself to speak. You're manipulating the divine stream. A pause, then a faint smile. Yes, no denial, no deflection, just truth. And that was worse. You think you've uncovered corruption, Malric said. But what you've actually uncovered? His presence leaned closer. Is necessity. The word hit harder than any blade. You're lying, I said. No, he replied calmly. I'm adapting. The threads around him pulsed faster. You've seen it yourself, haven't you? He continued. The gods hesitate. They fracture. They contradict themselves. A flicker of something moved behind him. Familiar. Painful, Solyn, dim, strained, barely present. You think that's strength? Malric asked. That's weakness. My chest tightened. You're forcing them, I said. I'm stabilizing them. He corrected. The difference made my stomach turn. You turned faith into control, I said. No, he replied evenly. I removed uncertainty. The space around him tightened. Because uncertainty, he said quietly, destroys civilizations. The corridor trembled. The vision began to collapse. But you, he added, voice sharpening slightly, are now a variable. The threads snapped. The vision shattered, and I slammed back into my body with a gasp. The hunt begins. Caelan, Marin's voice cut through the chaos. I looked up, just in time to see the corridor shift. The walls moved, not physically, structurally. Passages reconfigured, doors sealed, sigils burned brighter. He's locking us in, Leysa said. No, Thalin corrected grimly. He's guiding us. Keth cracked his neck. Good, saves us the trouble of finding him. Bram stepped forward. We don't fight him here. We might not have a choice, Marin said. The hum deepened. Then, movement. Figures emerged from the far end of the corridor. Paladins. But wrong. Their armor glowed too brightly, their movements too precise, their eyes empty. Obedientists, Caelan muttered. Not fully, Bram said quietly. I felt it too. They weren't just following orders. They were being driven. Containment team deployed, the system voice echoed. Correct deviation. Marin drew her blade. That's us. I stood, slowly, steadily. My hand tightened around my sword. No, I said. They're not the target. The others looked at me. They're the warning, I finished, and then they charged. The fight without divinity. The first paladin reached us in seconds. Blade raised. Perfect form, perfect execution. No hesitation. I parried. The impact jarred my arm. Not stronger than me, but relentless. No adjustment, no reaction. Just continuation. They don't adapt, Marin shouted. Because they don't choose, Thalin snapped back. Keth roared and slammed into one of them, sending the armored figure crashing into the wall. Lisa's fire flared, but carefully, controlled, avoiding divine run. Bram, Oathbound, ran through the chaos. Steady, precise, striking where needed, supporting where necessary. And me. I fought, without invoking, without reaching, without asking, just blade, just instinct, just choice. And for the first time, it felt right. Not easier, not stronger, but cleaner. The paladin before me struck again. I deflected, shifted, disarmed him, and instead of finishing, I stopped. His empty gaze locked onto mine, waiting, commandless. And for a split second, I saw it. The absence, the loss, the cost. Then Marin stepped in and knocked him unconscious. We don't have time to hesitate, she said. I nodded, but something inside me had shifted again. The escape fracture. More were coming. We could feel it. The corridor pulsed with incoming presence. They'll keep coming, Leysa said, until we're contained, Caelan added, or eliminated, Keth said with a grin. Bram shook his head. No, Malric doesn't want us dead. He wants control, I said. The realization settled quickly, cold, precise. He wants to prove that deviation leads to collapse, I continued. Marin looked at me. Then we don't collapse. No, I said. We don't. I turned toward the shifting corridor, toward the path that wasn't being offered, toward the resistance in the system itself, and I felt it, faint, subtle, but there, a gap, not in the walls, in the control. Caelan, I said. Where's the weak point? He didn't hesitate. Every system has one, he said. Show me where it doesn't want us to go. I closed my eyes for just a moment, not to pray, to listen. The pulse was there, faint, steady, guiding, not commanding. I opened my eyes. That way, I said, pointing to a sealed corridor. Caelan smiled faintly. Of course it is. Keth stepped forward. Then let's break it. No, I said. We don't break it. I stepped toward the sealed path and placed my hand on the barrier. The system reacted instantly. Unauthorized access. Correction required. The sigils flared, but beneath them, something else pushed back. Not force, not power. Truth. The barrier flickered, cracked, and opened. Not because I overpowered it, because it couldn't justify stopping me. Behind me, Caelan let out a quiet breath. That's new. Good, Marin said. Let's not waste it. We ran. The shadow that watches, the corridor beyond, was darker, quieter, less controlled, which meant more dangerous. Lysa's fire lit the path ahead, but the shadows didn't behave normally. They shifted, moved, watched. Keith slowed. I don't like this. Neither do I, Bram said. Caelan stopped abruptly. We're not alone. The air tightened, and then something stepped forward. Not a paladin, not a construct, not human, not divine. Something else entirely, something that felt familiar and wrong. My breath caught, because I had felt this before. In the vision, in the distortion, in the command that wasn't Solyn's. This was it, the source, the manipulator, and it was finally here. The truth of the enemy. It did not attack. It observed. A shifting form, light layered over shadow, but not like Null Star, not fractured, not honest. This was curated, controlled, a mask made of divinity. Finally, it said. The voice was smooth. Perfect, too perfect. You've reached the right conclusion. I stepped forward, sword ready. You're the one twisting the stream, I said. It tilted its head slightly. Twisting, it echoed. No, a faint smile. Refining. Marin moved beside me. We're not listening to you. It ignored her. Its focus stayed on me. You broke the seal, it said. You disrupted containment. You destabilized the system. Each word landed like measured weight. But you haven't yet understood the most important part. I tightened my grip, which is, it stepped closer, and the air bent around it. You think the gods were the source of truth. A pause, then they never were. The words hit harder than anything else so far. Because part of me knew it might be true. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The thing that speaks like a god. It stood before us like something that had learned how to imitate divinity. Not wear it. Not borrow it. Perfect it. Its shape was almost comforting at first glance. Humanoid, radiant, composed of layered light, but the longer I looked, the more wrong it became. The edges were too clean, the glow too even. No flicker, no strain, no hesitation. Where Null Star fractured, where Solyn struggled, this thing was seamless, and that terrified me more than anything we had faced so far. You've seen it now, it said, voice smooth as still water. The failure. My grip tightened on my sword. You mean the truth. A pause, then softly. No, it replied. I mean inconsistency. Marin stepped forward, blade angled low but ready. You're the one distorting the divine stream. It didn't look at her. You use that word as if it implies corruption, it said. It implies you, Caelan snapped. Still, it ignored him. Its attention remained fixed on me. You are the anomaly, it said, not the system. I felt that land, not as an attack, as a diagnosis. You're wrong, I said. No, it replied calmly. You're incomplete. The corridor shifted subtly behind it, shadows folding in ways that shouldn't have been possible. You've mistaken fracture for truth, it continued. Hesitation for virtue, conflict for morality. My chest tightened because that was exactly what I had begun to believe. That's what makes you dangerous, it finished. Keth stepped forward, rolling his shoulders. Good. I was worried we weren't making an impression. Still no reaction. Still no acknowledgement. Because it wasn't dealing with us as individuals, only as variables. I am not your enemy, it said. That, more than anything, made me want to strike. Yes, I said quietly. You are. A flicker, not visible, but felt. A minor recalibration. No, it repeated. I am what remains when divinity is no longer allowed to fail. The shape of control, the words settled like poison. You replace them, Lisa whispered. For the first time, the entity acknowledged someone else. Not replaced, it said. Stabilized. Bram exhaled slowly, at the cost of their will. At the cost of their inconsistency, it corrected. The distinction mattered to it, deeply. You saw it, it continued, returning its focus to me. The moment Solyn struck, the hesitation, the fracture. I didn't answer, because I had, and I couldn't deny it. That moment, it said, was the proof. Proof of what? Marin demanded. That gods cannot be trusted with truth, it replied. Silence slammed into the corridor, heavy, unforgiving. Truth requires consistency, it continued. Predictability, structure. Truth requires honesty, I said. It tilted its head slightly. Honesty is a variable, it replied. Truth is not. I took a step forward. Then why hide it? I asked. That made it pause. Not long, not visibly, but long enough. I did not hide it, it said. I refined it. No, I said. You erased the parts that made it real. The corridor trembled faintly, not from power, from pressure. You cling to imperfection as if it is sacred, it said. It is, Bram said quietly. The entity shifted its attention again. Explain. Bram didn't hesitate. Because without the ability to fail, he said, there is no ability to choose. The silence that followed was different, tighter, more focused. The entity processed that. I could feel it. Calculating, reframing, discarding. Choice, it said slowly, introduces instability. Yes, I said. And that's what makes it matter. The first true strike. The entity moved, not fast, not violently, but decisively. The space between us compressed, and suddenly it was closer. Too close. I swung, not out of fear, not out of instinct, out of certainty. The blade met resistance, not physical, conceptual, like striking something that refused to acknowledge the possibility of being struck. The impact rippled outward, the corridor bent, the light fractured, not in the entity, in reality itself, and then it responded not with force, with correction. My arm seized mid-motion, locked, frozen. You see, it said softly, your actions are inefficient. Marin lunged in beside me, and her blade passed through its form like it wasn't fully there. Not real, she snapped. No, Caelan said. Too real. Lisa's fire surged, but split, divided midair into clean, symmetrical arcs that dissipated harmlessly. "Your methods rely on imbalance," the entity said. "I do not." Keth roared and charged, and hit it. Actually hit it. The impact thundered through the corridor. The entity staggered, just a fraction, just enough. "Ha!" Keth barked. That worked. The entity turned its gaze toward him. Not angry, not surprise. Interested. Physical force, it said. Unstructured, unpredictable. Keth grinned. "That's me." And swung again. This time, the entity adapted. The strike slowed, redirected, dissolved. Correction implemented its eye. "So..." Keth blinked. "Well, that's new. The moment of doubt. We were losing, not because we were weaker, because we were being understood, adapted to, refined. Every move we made, it learned. Every strike, it optimized against. We can't fight this directly," Caelan said. "No," I agreed. "Then what?" Merrin asked. I didn't answer immediately, because something else was happening. Inside me, a pressure, familiar. Not the corrupted command, not the system. Something deeper, something quieter. And then, I heard it. Not words, not instructions. A question. "Why do you fight?" I froze. The entity tilted its head slightly. "You hesitate," it observed. But this time, the hesitation wasn't weakness. It was clarity. "I don't fight to win," I said slowly. The others looked at me, confused, concerned. "I fight to choose," I finished. The entity went still, completely. For the first time since it appeared, it did not respond immediately. And in that silence, something cracked. When Solyn speaks again, the pressure surged, the air fractured, and then light, not perfect, not controlled, broken, strained, flickering. Solyn, not as a full presence, not as a command, but as a voice, struggling to be heard. "Caelan," the entity recoiled, just slightly, but enough. "You are not permitted," it said. The light flickered harder. I felt it. The hesitation, the conflict, the will trying to break through. "They're still in there," Lisa whispered. "Yes," I said, and stepped forward. "Solyn," I said. The name no longer felt absolute, but it still mattered. "You hesitated," I continued. The entity moved to interrupt, but the light surged again, because it was wrong. The words broke through like a blade, raw, unfiltered, real. The corridor shook, the entity's form destabilized. "You were not meant to retain that," it said sharply. I ignored it. "You knew it was wrong," I said. The light flickered violently. Yes, the answer hit like a hammer. And everything changed. "The breaking of control, you see," I said, turning back to the entity. "They can choose." The entity's form sharpened, hardened. "That is the flaw," it said. "No," I replied. "That's the truth." The pressure in the corridor exploded outward, not in destruction. In contradiction, the system faltered, the sigils glitched. The structure failed to reconcile conflicting inputs. Truth, control, choice, order, they could not all coexist, and for the first time, the entity struggled. "This is inefficient," it said. "This is necessary," I replied. Merrin stepped beside me, then Lisa, then Bram, then Keth, then Caelan, not in formation, not in command, in decision. "We don't obey you," Merrin said. "We don't accept your system," Caelan added. "We don't need your perfection," Lisa said. Bram smiled faintly. "We choose anyway." Keth lifted his axe. "And we hit things," I almost laughed. "And then We moved, not together, not coordinated, not optimized, free. The entity tried to adapt, but it couldn't, because there was no pattern to follow, no system to refine, only choice, and choice could not be predicted. The corridor erupted in instability. The entity fractured, not destroyed, not defeated, but disrupted, and in that moment, we broke through. The path forward we ran, not blindly, not guided, but choosing each step. The corridor behind us collapsed into shifting light and shadow. The system struggled to reassert control, but it was too late. We had seen it, understood it, resisted it, and that changed everything. As we burst into open air, the sky above Dawnspear flickered, not with divine radiance, with fracture. Marin looked up. They're going to feel this everywhere. Yes, I said. Caelan exhaled slowly. Good. Lysa turned to me. What now? The question felt different now. Not heavy, not crushing, open. I looked at them, at all of them, then at the sky. At the fracture spreading across something far greater than us. We tell the truth, I said. Simple, terrifying. Right. Behind us, far below. The system recalibrated, the entity reformed. Malric watched, and for the first time, he was not entirely certain. The oath rewritten that night. For the first time since I took my oath, I did not kneel, I did not pray, I did not ask. I stood beneath the fractured sky and chose. My oath was never obedience, I said quietly. Marin stood beside me. What was it? She asked. I looked at my hands, at the blade I carried, at the path ahead. It was judgment, I said. A pause. Then, and judgment requires truth. The wind shifted, the fracture pulsed, and somewhere, deep beneath everything, a bound God was no longer silent.